A couple of weeks ago, I was at this backyard thing. There was a number of people there, and there were these cute little kids. One was 4, and her baby sister was 2. And we're out in the backyard, and the 2-year-old pushed the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old started crying, of course, and we all went over to see what happened, and it was nothing. But Grandma and Grandpa said, hey, you got to tell your sister sorry. And then the little one got real sad. And then they said, okay, now, go ahead. And we waited some more and nothing. And then she just walked away. And it's amazing to me how a 2-year-old knows. Never admit you made a mistake. Never, 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 never admit you made a mistake. Now, that's a very childish way to live, of course, but we know some people live like this. Now, I'm assuming you're at least 40 years old and you understand that you can't live like that. You have to, when you messed up, you have to say, hey, I messed up. But you know what I think is even more important is, haven't you noticed how difficult it is to admit a mistake to yourself? Isn't that even more powerful? And so today, I'd like to talk about that with you on episode 5 of the Misfit Mentor. Well, we sure do thank you for staying with us. You will have noted that this season we are interviewing people, and I really like the change. You know, I did 4 seasons, 40 episodes of just me, and it's been great to have other people come on, but I have to admit that sometimes I miss just talking to you, and so that's what I'm going to do today. So, as I said at the beginning, there is this idea that when we think about our life, it's kind of hard to say, okay, I messed up here. Now, the reason people don't do that is the obvious. And when you get to be my age, you understand this better. What it is you don't want to have regrets because you can't do anything about it. You can't go back, you know. The other day, I had a young man, he was only 15, and he said, I don't know what to do about school. Where shall I go? Private or public? I said, I don't know. And I said, but one day you'll be 35 and probably you'll wish that you would have done one or the other. So why don't you go think about that and call me back? And he called me back that evening and said, when I'm 35, I think I will be happy to be a homeschooler. I said, good for you. You figured it out. He said, I never thought of that. I said, yeah, you never do at 15. Even at 35, you don't think of it. You don't. But the main thing is that when you think of your life and think of things you want to do, mostly like me, we think about what we want. And that's not always the best, as you know. It's very much better to think about, so what do I need to do? And of course, it's hard to know that unless you think about, in 20 years from now, what do I wish I would have done so as to not have any, regrets? And that's a good game you can play with yourself when you're coming up on a decision. But most of the time, when we make decisions, if we look back, we can see that there were a lot of mistakes there, and for some darn reason, we don't want to admit it. You ever notice how sometimes people say, man, I got to get out of town. I just got to get out of town. I just got to get out of town. If I just get out of town, I think I'll be fine. And then you come back from going out of town and you're not fine. Everything is still there. Because, it's like, oh man, I went over there and guess I was there. And then I came back and there I was again. Same nonsense. And so please don't believe the lie that, oh, if I just get away for a while, you know, I'm going to be okay. A man just called me from, I think it was from New Mexico. And you know, they have a lot of flat land, but also a lot of nice mountains. And he was having one of those days and he said, oh, I went up to where I was born, you know, 8,000 feet above sea level. It was really great. I went hiking and I could do a lot of reflection. And I said, how'd it go? He said, I got nothing out of it. I said, oh, well, okay, that wasn't too helpful. And I said, why do you think it was so not helpful? He said, I just keep turning around the same ideas over and over and over. And I said, okay, so then what did that point to? And he said, well, probably I need to talk to somebody else, you know, and not just keep talking to myself. I mean, I'm all for talking to yourself. I am, really. Kind of drives my wife crazy, but I'm still all for it. But the point is that there are times when it just doesn't go anywhere, you know, and you've got to reach out to somebody. And I know this, because I was 40 at one time too, and I was somewhat in public life. I think we talked about that earlier. And you know, it's just not that easy to do, because, you know, you feel a little bit vulnerable and you don't want to talk about everything, and so you just keep it to yourself. And man, you know, when I was in my 40s, as I've told you many times before on this podcast, that man, I had some terrible times and I kept it to myself, and it just didn't help me. And so I do hope that you will not go up 8,000 feet above, you know, sea level and all of that, because you have to take yourself with you. And when you come back, there you are. And so try. And you know, if you need to talk to somebody that's outside your circle, talk to somebody that you don't really know that well. Or you can always contact me. I'll be happy to listen. Because there is this thing that's going on nowadays among people in their 40s, and they just don't want to, well, you just don't want to be known. I know a guy who uses a different name for all of his accounts, Amazon, Google, everything, because he's a bit of a public figure, and so he doesn't use his real name. But he consumes like crazy. Like, he's got 100 podcasts that he listens to. He buys a book a week or two. He's a big consumer, but he does it all by himself, and he might talk to one, maybe two people in the whole wide world, you know. But that's how he likes to do it. And if you're a 40-something and you're, excuse me, and you're doing okay for yourself, I can well imagine you're the same person. You are that person who says, you know what, let me go home and listen to something. If I hear an author and he sounds like he's put together, I think I'll get his book, see what I can learn, you know. And that's just the way it is nowadays. And we know that people who feel vulnerable don't like to join groups. They just don't. It's just too weird for them. They always say, I used to say, well, I don't have time. Now, of course, in my work, I automatically was built into a group because I was a pastor of a church and I was a missionary, so I had a built-in group there. But that doesn't mean, though, that I hung around with a lot of those people, you know. I really felt like I couldn't really hang around with them, you know. I mean, I could, but not really. And so I really, really want you to know that this can get hard on you. This can hurt you. And if you don't watch yourself, you can start to have dangerous ideas. I know you think that's not going to happen to me, but really smart people have done dumb things to themselves. You don't want that to happen to you. So a moment ago, I was talking about talking to yourself. And I really confess that I really do it a lot. Years ago, I was invited to this panel discussion with some different people. I was a pastor, and there was a missionary there was a psychiatrist. We were talking about homelessness. And at the break from the panel, I said to the psychiatrist, I said, my wife says it's crazy that I talk to myself. And he said, do you answer yourself? I said, yeah, I do. He said, oh, good. He said, the people who pretend not to hear it and then don't answer back, they're the ones we see at the hospital. Now, that was surprising to me. But actually, having worked in those kinds of hospitals for some years, I can remember that I'd have conversations with them, and they would pretend that they weren't hearing voices. And when I would ask them what's happening, they would say, oh, nothing. And they would almost be afraid, that I would know that they have voices or something. And so it almost seems like a good psychological, healthy way to be is to just admit everything. Just admit it all. I messed up. I'm crazy. What were we talking about earlier? I'm a fraidy cat. You're scared to try new stuff. I know a man who's in his 80s who runs a community center for older people. And I said, wow, that must be nice. He said, I really like it. He said, but I wish that the people our age, that they wouldn't just give in to the peer pressure. And I said, what? He said, I thought that was for teenagers. He said, oh, no. Older people, we're much worse. I said, really? Would you have thought that? I wouldn't have thought that. That older people actually give in to peer pressure much easier than teenagers do. Isn't that funny? That to me really cracked me up. So you can see how it is that I get it. I mean, nobody wants to be vulnerable. I get it. But here's the thing. People who are, they always win. Every single time. I can never think of a time that I wasn't feeling really stupid and vulnerable, that it didn't work out well for me. Arthur Miller, the great playwright, he said, every time I write something really good, I always feel embarrassed. I always feel embarrassed. Boy, that's perfect. That's exactly how I feel, when I do a podcast or when I do this, And so I do want you to know that those feelings are not going to leave you. Not ever. I mean, they're just in your body and they're there to stay. But you don't have to give in to them. I mean, you don't have to let them be the boss. An ancient teaching says it this way. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean you have to be afraid. See the difference? Those ancient people, they knew things. They knew just because I would feel afraid, that doesn't mean I can't go out into the desert and stay some days and do what I need to do. Or go out on a boat and fish, even though I don't want to because there are sea monsters over there. But you see how they faced it, and they did it even though they never stopped being scared. I don't know the name of the author, but the name of the book is Constructive Living. It'll be in the show notes. This man lives in Hawaii, and I'm not making this up. He is scared to fly, he's afraid to fly. And yet he lectures stateside, 32 times a year. So he's flying back and forth from Hawaii, and he never stops feeling frightened the whole 5 or 6 hours coming over the Pacific. Isn't that some? Never. I never stopped feeling afraid. But he said, what am I supposed to do? Wait for the feeling to go away? Well, it's not going to. And that's sort of a secret that we older people are not telling you younger folks. You just have to know it, that it doesn't go away. But that doesn't mean just because other people don't look like they're scared, they're just as scared as you are, probably even more. Because if you know you're scared, then you're ahead of the game. People who know they're scared are much more courageous than those who try to distract themselves from the scared feeling. Every time. Every single time. And so I hope you'll remember some of these lessons. I know I kind of rambled today, so I pray you'll forgive me for that. And I so wanted to talk to you one-to-one today. And so I hope you'll join us next time. And here's the other thing. I really appreciate when y'all subscribe and write me a line or whatever. And please let me know what we can do. We have a great team, and they've got big ears, and they listen well. And we're all about constructive criticism. So please tell us what we can do to make this better for you. We really have no other reason to do it. We want to help. I had such bad experiences when I was in my 40s. I don't want anybody to go through that, and that's why I do this now. So please write to us. Go to MisfitMentor.com. You can subscribe. You can check out our blogs and our video teachings. In the meantime, we thank our crew here today. We got Paul Brandt and Eugene Gussenhoven. God bless you guys. And the people from Fort Wayne Access Television. And I'm your host, Dr. Larry Merino. See you next time.